Never told. I tried to sell a candy to a billionaire at midnight, but he offered me a life change. It was midnight, the hour of secrets, dreams, and the unimaginable. James, a scrappy street vendor with a desperate hustle, stood on the corner lit by flickering streetlights. His heart raced. He had just a handful of colorful candy, gleaming like jewels under the pale glow. But this night would be different. Tonight he would meet someone who could change everything. The chill in the air was sharp against his skin, sending shivers racing down his spine. As he wrapped his fingers tighter around the candy box, the shadows seemed to twist and twirl, whispering secrets he couldn't quite grasp. Suddenly a sleek black car glided to a stop, purring like a wild beast. The back door swung open and there he was. A billionaire draped in a tailored suit, exuding a charisma that hit James like a punch to the gut. "What do you have for me?" the man asked, his voice smooth yet commanding. James stuttered, his throat tightening. Just some candy, sir. Homemade. Super special." His words tumbled out clumsily, but the rich man leaned closer, eyes glinting with intrigue. Behind him, the world dimmed, the bustling streets faded away. This was a moment, a doorway into something alive and electric. The billionaire's gaze flickered over the bright candies as if they held the keys to untold fortunes. James could see it, a spark of hunger, of wild ambition igniting in those depths. Suddenly the billionaire laughed, a rich sound that echoed in the stillness, and said, "Candy? How quaint. But I'm offering something much better. How would you like to change your life?" James's breath caught. Could he be serious? His mind reeled as images of better days danced before him. Was this the break he'd been waiting for? The tension swelled around him as he fought to gather his thoughts. Before he could reply, the billionaire added, "Meet me tomorrow. Midnight. You'll want to hear what I have in mind." Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. As the billionaire's voice faded into the night, James stood frozen. What did this mean? Little did he know, that single candy transaction was about to unravel a mystery that had haunted his town for years. The horizon buzzed with possibilities like crackling energy in the air. But was James ready to step into a world far beyond candy? Would he risk it all for a chance at something greater? As questions swirled in his mind, he felt a tremor of excitement and fear. Tomorrow everything could change. Would he take the leap? James tossed and turned in his sleep, chasing shadows that danced just out of reach. The billionaire's enigmatic offer echoed in his mind, winding through his dreams like a ghost. Change. The word pulsed like a heartbeat. He feared it, yet craved it with a desperate hunger. As dawn broke, a gray light spilled through his window, illuminating the cramped room he called home. It was a shabby studio above a pizza place, but it had kept him safe and warm. He flipped on the radio, seeking distraction, but the static only amplified his anxiety. "Don't miss the midnight deal of a lifetime," the announcer's voice blared. "Rumors are swirling about a mysterious billionaire looking for fresh talent. Is this your chance?" James's mouth went dry. He had only hours left to decide. He glanced at the small mirror where a worn-out version of himself stared back, the same old jeans, the faded t-shirt, a face worn by sleepless nights and endless hustles. But today he had a choice. A chance to rewrite his story. With a shaky hand, he poured the last of his pennies into a small tin. Each coin felt like a weight pressing down on his heart. What would he sacrifice for the opportunity that lay ahead? Digging deep, he thought about his mother and the sacrifices she made to keep him fed and in school. He owed her more than these streets could ever repay. This wasn't just about him anymore. As the sun began its descent, the familiar hustle and bustle of the city faded into an unsettling quiet. The streets felt alive, buzzing beneath the surface, like the nerves in James's body ready for the fireworks of change. He arrived at the same corner from the previous night, heart racing and palms sweating. Time stood still. The shadows were shifting once again. But this time they came with anticipation rather than dread. The sleek black car approached, headlights slicing through the darkening night like a knife. The door swung open. "Good to see you again," the billionaire greeted with a knowing smile, eyes stalking James's every move. "Come inside. We need to talk." The chill washed over him as he climbed in. The interior was as flawless as the man's suit, luxury upholstered seats, glowing screens, and the faint scent of expensive cologne mixed with something like danger. "What do you want from me?" James dared to ask, his voice small amidst the luxury. The billionaire leaned forward, his expression growing serious. "Talent. I need someone who knows the streets, someone who can think on their feet, someone like you," he said, each word heavy with implication. "There's an opportunity one want to discuss that could put you on the map." James's pulse quickened. "How? What do you mean?" The billionaire's smile returned, but it felt sharp, almost predatory. "It's a secret. But it involves the candy from last night. There's more to it than you can imagine." Before James could respond, the car stopped. The windows darkened, and the street before them turned into a dim alleyway. An odd feeling settled deep within him, a foreboding chill creeping back. "Are you ready to take the leap?" the billionaire asked, flashing a smile that felt less reassuring and more intimidating as James hesitated. The door swung open, revealing a world of shadows beyond. Could he truly step into this unknown? What lay on the other side of that threshold? James felt the weight of the choice settle heavily in his gut. The billionaire's eyes sparked as he waited. All his dreams hung in balance. Would he dare to step into the dark? The moment hung suspended in air. No going back. "What if I say yes?" he asked, heart pounding. Then prepare for a journey that could change everything. But what lay ahead in that dim alley? James took a deep breath, the thrill and anxiety swirling in equal measure. As he moved towards the door, a siren echoed in the distance, a reminder of what was real. Would he embrace the change? Or was he about to step into madness? The moment felt monumental, a point of no return, and the city held its breath. What would happen when he crossed that threshold into the unknown? James took a deep breath, his heart pounding like a drum. It was the kind of heartbeat that seemed to reverberate off the brick walls surrounding him, echoing his doubts and desires. The alley stretched before him, dark and alluring, the air heavy with the scent of rain-soaked pavement mixed with something sweet yet treacherous. The billionaire's gaze pierced him, a silent challenge wrapped in a predator's intent. "You have to trust me," he urged, leaning back slightly. "This isn't just a job. This is a life-altering opportunity. You could become more than you ever dreamed." James swallowed, his throat dry. Could he trust this man? He was walking into the unknown, placing his future in hands he barely knew. All the stories his mother had told him came flooding back about never accepting help from strangers, about what happens when one ventures too far from safety. But what if this was different? "Okay," he finally said, words trembling at the edges. "What's the plan?" "First, you need to understand about the candy." The billionaire smiled, but there was a glint of shrewdness in his eyes. "It's not just a product. It's a lure. An entry point into a world that's hidden in plain sight." James narrowed his brow. "What do you mean?" "Think of it as a key to a locked door," the billionaire explained, his voice smooth and steady. "Once you cross that threshold, you'll have access to something larger than life. Secrets, riches, and unimagined power. But it comes with a price. And the darkness that follows." Suddenly, a distant shout tore through the alley, and James jumped, instinctively pressing back against the car's luxurious leather seat. His heart raced again, this time out of sheer panic. "What kind of darkness?" "Let me show you," the billionaire said, his grin widening eerily. Before James could respond, the billionaire pulled out a small, glimmering pouch from his jacket. It caught the light for a moment, reflecting hints of vibrant colors: red, green, blue. "This is the first step." "What is it?" James whispered, his curiosity battling with trepidation. "Candy," the billionaire replied with a smirk. "But not the candy you think. This is a special kind, laced with something more potent. People are drawn to it, and it's the reason why they'll come to you." James felt an uneasy knot in his stomach. This wasn't just about selling sweets. It was something else altogether. "You're serious?" "Deadly," the billionaire answered, leaning closer. "You need to make a choice right now. Accept this candy and step into the life you've always wanted. Or walk away, and stay trapped in your current existence. The city felt alive around him, pulsing as he took in the gravity of the moment. The alley loomed large, and the shadows danced like hungry apparitions. His mind raced with thoughts of his mother, the sacrifices she made, the grim realities of their lives. What would she say? But the call of ambition drowned out her voice. Choose, James, the billionaire urged, his eyes locked on his. With a trembling hand, James reached for the pouch, feeling drawn to it as if it had a magnetic pull. The moment he touched it, a jolt of energy surged through him, igniting something deep within his bones, but he paused, fear gripping him. What happens after? What's the price? The billionaire's smile turned cold, revealing a truth that hung like a blade ready to drop. You'll learn soon enough, and trust me, you might not like what you find. James's heart plummeted as he stood at the crossroads, the candy in his grasp, the weight of his future resting heavy on his shoulders. In that moment the sirens wailed again, but this time they felt closer, more urgent. Could he afford to leap into the dark unknown? As he stared at the pouch, all he could think was he willing to pay the price? And what lurking horror awaited him on the other side of choice? James's heart kicked into a frantic rhythm as he held the pouch, every fiber of his being screaming for him to turn back. Yet the billionaire's gaze, sharp and unyielding, anchored him in place. Listen closely, the billionaire said, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. You must distribute the candy in a very specific way. It's not just about sales, it's an initiation. Each piece you give away is a piece of your soul that you trade for what you desire. The alley seemed to close in around them, the shadows morphing into sinister figures ready to pounce. Doubt warred within him. Was this truly the chance he had been aching for, or a trap designed to ensnare him? Why would anyone want this? James asked, forcing his voice to stay steady. What's so special about it? The billionaire tilted his head, a twisted smile creeping onto his lips. Oh, people crave what they can't understand. This candy holds more than sweetness. It whispers a hidden truth about their desires, their fears, their deepest cravings. Once they taste it, they'll come back for more. More? Yes, James. The billionaire leaned closer, his breath warm and filled with a chilling promise. They'll do anything to feel that rush again. And that's where you come in. You will become a god in their eyes. A part of James wanted to recoil, to toss the pouch back at the billionaire's feet and run. But another part, the ambitious, desperate part, found its thirst insatiable. And if I say yes, then we'll both profit. The billionaire stepped back, eyeing James like a prize to be won. You must move quickly. The night is young, but your time to act is dwindling. The longer you hesitate, the more you'll lose. Glancing back towards the street, he was startled to see a group of figures approaching through the misty haze. They were shadows draped in darkness, voices rising and falling in an excited murmur, eager for what he held in his palm. James! One of them shouted, recognizing him. Is that what I think it is? As if in a trance, he stepped forward, his fingers gripping the pouch tightly. Stay back, he warned, heart leaping in his throat. You don't know what this is. But they surged forward, their eyes wild with need, and James felt the weight of the decision crush him. A wave of anticipation kicked against his chest, mixing with panic. He was losing control, losing himself. Do it, the billionaire urged softly, inching closer again. Release your ambition. Channel your fear into action. The moment is yours. James swallowed hard, feeling the candy pulse in his hand, a promise of what could be success, power, escape from the dark edges of his life. He glanced at the approaching crowd, hungry, desperate. Could he transform their cravings into his own salvation? The doubts clawed at him, but the thrills surged. Okay, he breathed, thrusting the pouch toward the eager hands. Take it. Just be careful. You don't know what you're getting into. Their faces lit up with greed and delight as fingers snatched the candy from him, the allure capturing their souls, dragging them into an unseen abyss. Shock filled their expressions as they tasted a world they never knew existed. As the last piece vanished into the chaos, James felt an overwhelming rush of exhilaration. But then he saw the billionaire's icy smile widen. Welcome to the game, James. Let us see how far you can rise even as the darkness closes in. Jaw clenched, fear creeping back in, James couldn't shake the nagging question. What had he just unleashed? And what awaited him when the revelry turned to ruin? The moment the last candy was gone, the crowd erupted into a frenzy. Some cheered, others screamed, their faces alight with an unholy mix of euphoria and desperation. James stood rooted, transfixed by the madness he had ignited. "James, did you see that?" A familiar voice broke through the chaos. It was Lucy, one of his childhood friends, her eyes wide with astonishment. She grabbed his arm, pulling him away from the fray. "What just happened?" "I don't know," he gasped, fear tightening around his chest. I just gave them candy." Lucy's gaze darted past him to the remaining shadows in the alley, her expression shifting from excitement to a slow dawning horror. "You need to get out of here. You have no idea what you've done." But he felt it, the electric pulse of ambition crackling through his veins. The sensation was intoxicating. It wrapped around him like a warm blanket despite the chaos. No, this is my chance, Lucy. They want more and I can give it to them." She shook her head, panic rising in her voice. "You don't understand. The billionaire, what he said. It's not just candy. People are reacting like they're possessed. We need to stop this before it spirals out of control." The crowd thrashed around him, caught in a maddening dance of hunger and greed. Visions of wealth flashed through James's mind, shimmering like mirages in a desert. People would line up. They would pay any price. He opened his mouth to argue, but the words wouldn't come. The thrill of power drowned it all out. Then the crowd shifted. A tall figure emerged, towering over the others. It was one of the men from earlier, a seeker of wealth and power whose presence seemed to drain the life from the mood. He wore a tattered coat, but his eyes glinted with the kind of hunger that made James shiver. "What is this magic?" he growled, his voice low and possessive. "Tell me. I want more." "James," Lucy said urgently, "we have to go. Now." But James was drawn deeper into the chaos, the thrill turning darker, more sinister. "Wait!" he shouted, raising his hands like a conductor silencing an orchestra. "This is just the beginning. If you want more, I can get it for you." Gasps rose from the crowd, excitement mixing with fear. "He knows. He has more," someone yelled, pulling his attention from Lucy. The eyes around him gleamed, insanity simmering just beneath the surface. "Listen," James continued, his voice trembling in the overwhelming atmosphere. "If you want the rush again, I can provide it, but what?" The tall figure barked, stepping closer, his interest piqued by James's hesitation. James realized then that he was straddling a precarious line. The taste of ambition was sweet, but it was laced with a poison he couldn't ignore. I need you to trust me, to follow my rules." Laughter erupted, but there was an edge to it. The tension thickened, and James struggled to hold on to whatever semblance of control he had. Lucy's hand tightened on his arm, the warmth of her touch grounding him. "You're walking into something dark, James. Don't let greed blind you." But as the thrumming of adrenaline surged within him, he felt it slip away, a consciousness teetering on the brink of a cliff. The whispers of the billionaire echoed, clawing their way back into his mind. "You will become a god in their eyes." The crowd surged forward, and he could almost feel their collective desperation wrapping around him like a vice. "What do I have to do?" he called, caught in the whirlwind. The tall figure grinned, baring teeth that shone like a predator's. "Just give me what I want, and I'll show you how deep this rabbit hole goes." Panic erupted within him, battling against the thrill of the promise. What would he have to sacrifice to go deeper? And as the darkness caved in, James couldn't help but wonder, would he rise or become yet another soul lost in the abyss? The air was thick with tension, suffocating as he stood frozen at the edge of the chaos. James could hear the heartbeat of the crowd, a frantic rhythm pounding in his ears. Lucy's grip tightened, raw panic evident in her eyes as she scanned the faces, a mix of longing and madness. "James, this ice in a game," she shouted over the turbulent commotion. Each frantic melody of laughter and shouts clawed at his resolve, but the lure of their unquenchable thirst gnawed at him. "I can't just walk away now. I've opened a door they didn't even know existed, and it might swallow you whole." Lucy's voice cracked as she pulled him back, desperation spilling from her. But he was fixated, transfixed by the wild glint in the tall figure's eyes. "What is it you can offer?" the mysterious man pressed, stepping closer, invading James's space. The crowd swirled around them, an endless sea of hungry faces. James swallowed hard, a knot tightening in his throat. I can get more of the candy, but it won't be just candy. It will be the ultimate rush, something beyond anything you've ever tasted. The words poured out, almost as if they had a life of their own. The man, intrigued, leaned forward. And what's the cost? His pulse quickened. Did he even know what the cost might be? Would it cost him his sanity, his morals? I need followers. People willing to do whatever it takes to get that high. Hi. The figure smirked, darkness swirling in his gaze. That sounds like a drug. Are you suggesting you want to create addicts? A bitter taste rose in James's mouth. But the voices in his head drowned out the warning bells. No, this is different. I'm offering a taste. Imagine the power. People would flock to me. Or they could turn against you, Lucy pleaded, her fierce expression softening with concern. This isn't a shortcut to success. This is dangerous. Yet, as he locked eyes with the man, the thrill of potential changed. The crowd's whispers became urgent, a crescendo of craving echoing around them. He was being swept into something far bigger, darker, and undeniably more intoxicating than he had ever anticipated. I'll do it, he muttered almost to himself. What? Lucy's voice was barely a whisper, laced with disbelief. I'll do it, he shouted, and the crowd surged forward like a predator drawn toward its prey. I'm in. The tall figure's grin widened, revealing teeth stained with lust for power. Then let us see how deep the rabbit hole goes. But as he surrendered to the chaos, a nagging question hung in James's mind. At what point had the chase for greatness turned into a descent into madness? In that rushed moment, he saw flashes of himself lost, spiraling into the very depths of his own ambition. But he couldn't look away. Suddenly, the lights flickered above. Gasps echoed through the crowd, their ecstatic anticipation swiftly darkened by a shiver of unease. Shadows stretched across the alleyway like ominous fingers, swirling around the edges of the scene. What is happening? Lucy screamed, searching the faces that had turned from desire to terror. Stay close, James yelled, anxiety cutting through the haze of euphoria that had consumed him. The beauty of the power he craved morphed into something abhorrent, something that clawed at his very being. And then a scream pierced the air, a high sharp sound punctuating the fear hanging like a fog, and James's heart raced. Something was wrong, very wrong, and he could feel it deep in his bones. James! We need to get out of here! Lucy shouted. But as he turned to flee, a glimmer of something dark caught his eye, another shadow in the alley, gleaming with a menacing aura. And for a heart-stopping moment, he realized he wasn't the only one who had been drawn into this nightmare. All around him, the people he thought he could control were starting to turn. What had he truly unleashed? And in that split second, with uncertainty clawing at his mind, he knew the next choice could seal his fate. Would he choose to fight against the darkness within? Or would he succumb, chasing the specter of power? The ground shook beneath James's feet, vibrating with an energy he couldn't comprehend. The shadows around him twisted and expanded, pulsing like a living thing. Panic surged through the crowd, eyes wide with fear as those once hungry for excitement began to hurl words of desperation into the ether. What is happening? They clamored, their voices blending into a cacophony that drowned out his thoughts. Stay with me. Lucy pulled at his arm, forcing his gaze back to her. The look in her eyes was like a lifeline tethered in a storm. This isn't what you wanted. But the magnetic pull of the tall figure held him captive. The man's grin had shifted, morphing from a seductive welcome to a dark challenge. Shadows flitted around him, twisting his figure into something grotesque. James, the man murmured, his voice like silk, you've stirred something primal. Did you truly believe this would be simple? The words wrapped around James's mind like chains, squeezing tighter with each inhale. I thought, he stammered, his pulse pounding in rhythm with the chaos around them. I thought I could control it. Control? The figure laughed, a sound devoid of warmth. Behind him, the crowd swelled and reeled, a horde entranced and spiraling toward hysteria. Power isn't about control. It's about chaos. And you've just ignited a fuse. Run! Lucy cried, her panic igniting his own. She tugged again, harder this time, her voice a burning ember cutting through the haze. But something gripped James's heart, winding tighter until he felt he couldn't breathe. I can't leave, he shouted, the desperation pouring from him. Not now. I need to see where this goes. Then, without warning, the first scream erupted, a piercing cry that sliced through the ruckus like a knife. It came from one of the crowd, a man who had been leaning too close to the shadows. He staggered backward, clutching his face, blood spilling between his fingers. "Everyone back!" shouted a stranger, pushing against the tide of bodies, but the panic was infectious. People scrambled, shoving and elbowing their way out, eyes wide with terror. James knew he should follow Lucy, should run while he still could, but the allure of the dark presence the tall figure radiated was intoxicating. It was a gamble, a risk so enticing it put him on fire. This was the promise of power, the taste of it lingered sweetly in the air. The figure leaned forward, his voice softening. "You wanted followers, didn't you? You wanted to taste the power and feel the rush. But can you handle what comes next?" James watched, entranced, as the man raised his hand like a conductor summoning an unseen orchestra. Suddenly the shadows lunged forward, like beasts unleashed, reaching for the terrified crowd. Gasps echoed and panic morphed into a stampede of flesh, pushing against James and Lucy. "No!" Lucy yelled, but he didn't move. He was fixated on the burgeoning chaos, a dark thrill igniting within him. Out of the corner of his eye, he caught glimpses of twisted figures emerging from the depths, faces warped in madness. They had succumbed to the call of the shadows, transforming into something primal, driven by the hunger within. And then in an instant everything collapsed into chaos. Tension exploded, shouts piercing the darkness as more screams filled the night. "James! Now!" Lucy grabbed him, pulling desperately, but all he could think about was the intoxicating allure that whispered promises of unrestrained ambition. What was he willing to sacrifice to be in that realm? As they turned to flee, an underground pulse thrummed through the air, an unsettling promise that reverberated in his bones, just as the shadows danced closer. And just like that, the darkness closed in, leaving him breathless, standing at the precipice of his own ambition. Could he unlock the power within, or would he be devoured by it? The air was thick with terror, swirling like the shadows clawing at the crowd. Lucy's grip tightened around James's arm, pulling him as panic-stricken bodies surged past them. The figure loomed ahead, an almost godlike presence, an orchestra conductor leading a symphony of chaos, and James found himself craving a front-row seat. "James, please. We've got to go," Lucy begged, her voice shaky, blending with the wails of the injured and the frantic cries of those trying to escape, but every fiber of James's being screamed to stay. He felt alive, ignited by the dark energy, the rush twisting inside him like a wildfire. It was intoxicating. How could he abandon the possibility of wielding such power? Suddenly, another scream cut through the air, a young woman, her face frozen in horror as the shadows lunged, dragging her figure into the pitch black. The crowd gasped collectively, a sharp intake of air that felt fatal, but James was almost mesmerized, entranced not only by the energy but by the chaos unfolding. The noise, madness, it surrounded him like a cloak. "James!" Lucy's voice quaked, snapping him back to reality. "Snap out of it." But the fury of the shadows surged like an echo within him, whispering sweet promises of strength and dominance. As he wrestled with his thoughts, the figure smiled wider, as if he could sense the sway of James's loyalties. "Join me, James." The voice slipped through the air, smooth and velvety. "Together we can command more than you ever dreamed. Power isn't given, it's seized." Each word wrapped around James, tightening like a noose. The shadows danced at the edge of his vision, their forms shifting and thrumming with energy. His pulse raced. Was this the moment he'd been waiting for? The convergence of choices that could change everything? "No," Lucy cried, shaking him fiercely. "You can't trust him. Don't listen." She stood there, eyes wide, glistening with fear and determination. In that moment, he glimpsed the person he cherished most, the one who anchored him amidst the tumult. He should have followed her. He should have felt her fear and yielded to it, but he hesitated, caught in the pull of ambition. Then the ground shook again, this time harder. A wave of dust and debris swirled around them, the force knocking people off their feet, sending screams echoing through the night air. James stumbled, his heart racing as the shadowy figures began to coalesce, forming limbs and motes of burning eyes around him. The crowd fragmented. People ran, limbs flailing, hearts pounding in their chests. But still he stayed, rooted by curiosity and a sense of wild, reckless exhilaration. "What is happening?" a man screamed, his voice dripping with despair, but they all knew. They all felt it. The shadows had taken a life of their own. In a moment of clarity, James turned to Lucy. "I can't just leave. What if this is a chance for us? A way to change everything? Change comes at a price," she shouted back, desperation sharp in her tone. "Sometimes it's more than you're ready to pay." Before he could respond, there was a shudder that reverberated through him, and a shadow lunged. It was quicker than he could react. Wrapping around his leg like a heavy vine, he felt the ice of its touch seep into his skin, panic rising in his throat. Struggling, James lost his footing and fell hard to the ground, the crowd swirling around him in a chaotic blur. "James!" Lucy screamed as she leaped forward, but was halted by the swarm of bodies pressing against her. As darkness enveloped him, reality began to shift. He could feel the shadows reaching deeper, searching for his essence, testing the limits of his ambition. A roar of sound blasted through the air. As screams merged into one cacophonous wave, would it drown him, or would it elevate him? And in that moment, as the world dimmed, the question hung palpably in the air. What was he willing to sacrifice for power? As everything spiraled into darkness, the very essence of the shadows enveloping him, James's heart raced with uncertainty. The choice loomed before him, the path diverging into unknowns. Would he succumb to the shadows and embrace the madness, or would Lucy's voice pull him back into the light? James was engulfed. The shadows twisted around him like a dark storm, pulling him into their depths. He could feel them probing, invading his thoughts, filling his mind with haunting whispers. Power, greatness, just let go. The echo danced with his heartbeat, sinking with the chaos outside. With a fierce jerk, he tried to break free. "No," he gasped, struggling against the icy tendrils wrapping tighter around his leg, as if sensing his hesitance. He clawed at the ground, each inch a battle against an unseen force, but he remained trapped in their cold embrace. Panic surged through him. Lucy! She was there, the lifeline he had almost severed. And amidst the thrumming urgency, a new slap of clarity broke through the haze. He had to escape, to fight for her, for both of them. The shadows coiled around his body, heavier than any weight he'd felt before. They suffocated him with potential, littering his mind with glimmers of truths better left unturned. But then from the opaque darkness the voice returned, smoother than silk. "Embrace it. You can have it all, James. Don't listen," Lucy cried, her voice penetrating through the discord. The sight of her struggling against the throng of panic-stricken people jolted him alive again. He could see her fear, but more importantly he could see her resolve. And that made all the difference. In one swift motion, as if responding to his will, he gathered all his energy. With a powerful lurch, he broke free from the grasp of shadows, staggering onto his feet. His leg burned with a frostbite that itched relentlessly. He turned and sprinted toward Lucy, each step igniting more strength in him. "James!" she shouted, her face a map of relief and determination. But before they could reconnect, the shadowy figure moved, blocking their only avenue of escape. It towered above them, casting a monstrous silhouette over the frantic crowd. "You think you can flee from this? From me?" It spoke with a voice like thunder, low and reverberating, the weight of its tone echoing inside James's ribcage. Anger flared within James, replacing fear. "I'd rather risk everything than let you have me." The shout erupted from his throat, raw and defiant. The words hung in the air, electrified. The figure smirked, a predatory glint in its eyes. "You don't know the sacrifice this demands. Power comes with a cost, even for the defiant." The shadows behind him roared, a sound fierce enough to silence the crowd, making them tremble in their faceless dread. But in that moment, as the shadows writhed in unison, James caught a glimpse deeper than mere inky blackness. He saw potential, his potential. The darkness beckoned, promising everything. "What will you pay?" asked the figure, its voice curling insidiously around his resolve. "What lies in the depths of your heart?" For a moment doubt slithered into his mind. What if this was fate? What if giving in meant survival? But there was Lucy, her gaze anchored to him, demanding him to recall who he was and who he might lose. With a sudden burdening sense of duality, he realized the truth of it all. Everyone wanted power, but some just wanted to be believed in. That was the ultimate force, one that could silence the chaos. Together, he yelled, turning back to Lucy, offering his hand, a bridge between their worlds. We can fight this. She nodded, taking his hand, and together they pushed back against the shadow. The crowd began to stir, voices blending in a trembling wave of hope, rallying as they saw the stand being taken. They grew louder as James felt a fire building within. As they pooled their courage, the figure's amusement morphed into fury. The darkness flickered, faced with unity unlike it had ever encountered before. Then came a sudden explosion of light, a burst so bright it illuminated their surroundings, a pulse of energy that radiated outward. James realized that the choice resonated beyond him. It surged through Lucy, through every person swept up in this nightmare. But just as the shadows began to recoil from the light, a deafening silence fell. His heartbeat synchronized with Lucy's gasp, and the light flickered again, threatening to extinguish. What are we going to do? She asked, panic seeping into her voice. The figure loomed large again, the shadows coiling protectively around it. You think you can resist? You will join me one way or another. As the darkness surged forth, James clenched Lucy's hand tighter. Together they were unbreakable. But at that moment, everything felt uncertain. What would they have to sacrifice to uncover the power they needed? Would they even make it out before the darkness consumed them entirely? The heaviness in the air swirled around James and Lucy, a thick fog enveloping them as they stood together, unmoving against the relentless advance of shadows. The crowd, once alight with wild ambition, now felt an echo of fear ripple through its ranks. James could see it in their eyes, the realization that the power they chased might devour them whole. We need to confront it, face it. Together, James declared, steeling himself and glancing at Lucy. Her unwavering gaze mirrored his determination. In that instant he felt a surge of courage. This wasn't just about his ambition anymore. It was about the lives caught in the reward and ruin of it all. As shadows writhed menacingly around the tall figure, he let out a laugh, deep and rumbling, the sound reverberating against the brick of the alley. You can't hope to resist me. Join me, and I'll grant you both power beyond your wildest dreams. James shook his head. No, we won't become pawns in your game. A quiet strength filled his voice now. He stepped forward, hand clasping Lucy's, the heat of their grip igniting an inner fire. The crowd, stirred by their defiance, began to shift around them, gaining courage in the face of looming darkness. Together we will push through this, Lucy echoed, her spirit unwavering. Our strength doesn't come from what we achieve alone but from standing united. Her voice rallied the hesitant. The tension in the air shifted. Whispers of hope began to stir. James watched his words ripple through the crowd, fear replaced with determination. People began to step forward, moving away from the pull of shadows, creating an aura of solidarity around them. It was like a wave washing over the darkness, persistence battling against despair. With a sudden surge of energy, James held their joined hands high overhead, visually illuminating their tight-knit unity. If you take our light, then we'll rise as one. This shadow cannot consume us if we face it together. The figure glared back, fury igniting his features. Foolish. You think unity can overpower what lies within? I've consumed souls far too great to fall to weak bonds. But James stood strong, every ounce of his conviction directed at the swirling shadows. He felt that shared resolve, each flicker of hope amplifying, igniting. No, our bonds are our strength. Every heart here beats with the same desire to be more than what we are. We won't fall into your pit of deception. The shadows recoiled momentarily, fluctuating under the power of James and Lucy's united front. Encouragement flowed through the crowd, gathering like a thunderous storm. Fight back! They yelled, each voice building into a powerful chorus of defiance. Then, a radiance erupted. It started as a faint glow and quickly morphed into a blinding light that shattered the darkness wielded by the tall figure. Voices rang out, uplifted and resolute, mingling with their luminous fervor. The shadows hissed, recoiling as though burnt by the luminous tide. The sharp taunts of the figure pulsed against their resolve. You believe this will save you? You're a trifling match against an unending darkness. But in one united breath, the crowd roared, we are stronger together. The light swelled. It filled every crevice of the alley, where shadows once thrived, overwhelming the figure and pushing back against its serrated edges. James felt warmth radiating not only from within but also from every person standing beside him, an undeniable truth blooming in their unity. In a last desperate attempt, the figure lunged forward, but James held Lucy's hand tighter, closing his eyes as he leaned into the chaos. The shadows tried to consume him, but he envisioned not only his future but the collective dreams of everyone standing with him, the lives they could lead unshackled from fear. And then it happened. With a blinding flash, darkness and light collided in an electrifying explosion. The world shifted, and all went silent for a heartbeat. But then a warmth enveloped him, blossoming from the center, spreading through every part of his being. When James opened his eyes, the shadows had dissipated, revealing a dawn breaking over the horizon. The streets, once muddled with chaos, now appeared washed clean, as fresh beginnings unfolded. The people around him looked dazed but filled with an odd sense of freedom, a shared liberation they had fought for. Relieved laughter echoed, breaking the silence. Lucy turned to him, her eyes bright and full of life. "We did it," she whispered, the weight of the night lifting. "We really did it." James' heart swelled, knowing they had fought back the darkness together and resisted being puppets of greed, a real victory. A testament of hope, a burst of optimism breaking forth from despair. "We chose who we wanted to be. We embraced our strength." He grinned at the faces surrounding them, now returning to life. Together, they stepped out of the alley, emerging under a radiant sunrise. They saw possibilities stretching out before them, new beginnings where they could embrace their potential free from darkness. Though shadows may linger at the edges of society, the courage within was far brighter than any darkness they might encounter again. It was time to carve out their own paths, stories untold. And as they walked on hand in hand, dawn illuminating the path before them, let this be the reminder. There will always be a choice between light and darkness, but together, they could overcome anything. The echoes of ambition still called their names, but now it would be shaped by unity, wisdom, and the strength they had forged in the face of adversity. So hear us the truth. Every moment the good, the bad brings you here. This is the moment to decide your fate. Now's your turn. Don't lose track, it's time to step forward. Subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories coming your way. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this epic ending. And most importantly, instantly share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion, because together, we can ignite a movement. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share.